Here we are, right in the middle of one of the most dramatic weekends of the Premier League season. And if you are an Arsenal supporter, this is not the Saturday you wanted. The Emirates Stadium, a ground that had been a fortress for almost the entire campaign, has just been breached. Not by a top six rival, not by a Champions League heavyweight, by Bournemouth. And that single result has shifted the entire mood around this title race in a way that nobody who supports Arsenal can afford to ignore. Let us be absolutely clear about what happened here. Arsenal walked into that game against Bournemouth with a 9-point lead at the top of the Premier League table. At this stage of the season, that kind of lead is supposed to be a cushion. It is supposed to give you breathing room. It is supposed to mean that even on a bad day, the damage is limited. But the reality for this Arsenal side is that the cushion just got significantly thinner and the pressure just got significantly heavier. The Cherries came to North London and they earned all 3 points. They did not steal them. They did not get lucky. By all accounts, Bournemouth were the deserving winners on the day, and that is perhaps the most uncomfortable part of this story for Arsenal supporters to sit with. Because when you lose to a team and they deserve it, that tells you something deeper about where your team is right now. And what makes this even more difficult to process is the timing. Arsenal are in the final stretch of what could be a historic season. They have been at the top of the Premier League for so long. They have done so much right. And yet, right at the moment when the finishing line is coming into view, the legs appear to be going, the confidence appears to be wavering, and the questions around Mikel Arteta and his decisions are getting louder. Now let us talk about what this result actually means in terms of the title race, because this is where things get really serious. Manchester City is still chasing. They have not gone away, and the situation is now such that if City win their game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on Sunday, that 9-point lead immediately becomes 6 points. And then the week after that, the two teams meet directly at the Etihad Stadium. If City win that game as well, the gap drops to 3 points. At that stage, with games still remaining, this title race becomes something completely different to what it looked like just 48 hours ago. Pep Guardiola himself has made the situation crystal clear. He said, and these are his words, that if Manchester City do not win at Stamford Bridge, then the title race is over. He was not being modest. He was not being polite. He was being brutally honest about the mathematics and the reality of what his team needs to do. He said, quote, 9 points is a lot of points against that Arsenal, and he is right. But he also made it clear that if City win against Chelsea and then beat Arsenal at the Etihad, the illusion of possibility comes back to life. So the stakes could not be higher. Arsenal are not yet in crisis. Let us be fair about that. A 9-point lead with games to play is still a very significant advantage, but the momentum is shifting, and in football, momentum is everything. Before we go any deeper into this analysis, I want to say something directly to you watching right now. If you are the kind of football supporter who wants proper analysis, who wants someone to break down the decisions, the implications, and the real story behind the headlines, then hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is built for people who want the full picture, not the noise, not the drama for the sake of it, the real analysis. Subscribe now and make sure you never miss a breakdown like this one. Let us now go through each layer of this story carefully, because there are several things happening at once here and each one deserves proper attention. The first thing to address is the loss itself. Arsenal lost 2-1 at home to Bournemouth, and as I said earlier, it was a deserved defeat. That matters enormously. In the context of a title race, there is a difference between a team that loses unluckily and a team that loses because they were not good enough on the day. The evidence suggests that on Saturday, Arsenal simply did not perform to the level required. There was very little fight shown, there was very little urgency, and against a team like Bournemouth, who came with a clear game plan and executed it well, that lack of intensity was punished. Now, this is not an isolated moment either. The situation is that Arsenal have now lost 3 of their last few games in the league. That is a run of form that is deeply concerning when you are trying to hold on to a title lead. It is one thing to drop points against a top team. It is another thing entirely to drop them at home against sides who are not expected to threaten you. That pattern is something Arteta absolutely must address. The second layer of this story is about a specific decision Mikel Arteta made before the game even kicked off. And this one is worth examining very carefully because it tells us something about how Arsenal are operating as a unit right now. Arteta made a change to his leadership group. For this entire season, the captain order at Arsenal has been very clear. Martin Odegaard is the captain. Bukayo Saka is next in line. Then comes Gabriel Magalhaes, then Declan Rice, then Mikel Merino, with Gabriel Jesus sitting sixth on that list. That hierarchy has been set and established since the start of the campaign. It has not been altered until Saturday. With Odegaard and Saka both unavailable due to injury, the armband should have gone to Gabriel Magalhaes. That is what the established order demanded. That is what everyone expected. But Arteta made a different call. He handed the captaincy to Declan Rice instead, bypassing Gabriel completely. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a small thing, but in a high-pressure title race situation, small things carry enormous weight. And the timing of this decision raises very real questions. The evidence suggests that Tony Adams has been pushing Arteta to make Rice the permanent captain of Arsenal. Adams has been vocal about this for some time. And it appears that on Saturday, Arteta listened to that external voice and acted on it, making a change that had not been made at any point during the entire season up to that point. Here is the problem with that. When you are in the most critical part of your season, when every game is a potential turning point, when your squad needs certainty and stability, you do not introduce new variables. You do not change the things that have been working. You go back to basics. You keep your structures in place. You give your players the familiarity and the clarity they need to perform. By changing the captaincy order, Arteta sent a message, intentionally or not, that something was shifting, that the existing hierarchy was being questioned. And in a team environment, especially at the elite level, that kind of signal can create subtle but damaging uncertainty. Players notice these things. They read the environment constantly. And when the manager does something unexpected and unexplained, it creates questions in the dressing room that do not need to be there. The result speaks for itself. Arsenal showed almost no fight on the day. They were beaten in a way that felt passive and unconvincing. And while the captaincy change is certainly not the only reason for that performance, the reality for the club is that the decision was unnecessary and it came at exactly the wrong time. Gabriel Magalhaes has worn that armband before when Odegaard and Saka were unavailable. He has done it without incident. He is a natural leader in the Arsenal defence. There was absolutely no footballing reason to skip past him on Saturday, and yet it happened and it backfired. Arteta will now need to make a decision about what comes next. Does he revert to the established order, or does he continue with this new approach? Whatever he decides, the question will hang over the team heading into the biggest game of their season. The third layer of this analysis concerns Pep Guardiola and what he said in the lead up to the Chelsea game. And this is where things get genuinely fascinating from an analytical perspective. Guardiola was speaking in the embargoed section of his press conference, and what he said was striking in its honesty. He made it absolutely clear that if Manchester City drop points against Chelsea, the title race is finished. He did not try to pretend otherwise. He said his team has to win every single remaining game. He said one drop point means forget about it. He said 9 points against this Arsenal team is a mountain that requires perfect execution to climb. Now, on one level, this is simply accurate. The mathematics are what they are. Guardiola is not wrong. If City lose to Chelsea, the gap stays at 9 points with very few games left. At that stage, barring a complete collapse from Arsenal, it is effectively done. But on another level, it is worth considering what effect these words are designed to have. Because Guardiola is one of the most experienced and psychologically sophisticated managers in the history of football. He knows exactly what he is saying and why he is saying it, and the idea that he is simply being transparent without any tactical calculation behind it is something I want to examine. When Guardiola publicly says the title race is over if we lose, he is doing several things at once. First, he is motivating his own players by framing the Chelsea game as a must-win moment. That much is obvious. Second, and this is the more subtle part, he is planting a seed in the minds of Arsenal players and staff. By making the stakes so explicit, by making the win over Chelsea sound like it transforms the situation completely, he is inviting Arsenal to start calculating, to start thinking about what happens next, to look over their shoulder. Arteta knows Guardiola better than almost anyone in football. He worked alongside him for years. He understands how Guardiola operates. The evidence suggests that Arteta will tell his players to block out everything coming from the Manchester City camp and focus only on their own performance. But the question is whether that message lands as clearly as it needs to, especially after a defeat that has clearly shaken the group. There is also something else in Guardiola's words that is worth noting. He said that if City win the Chelsea game and then beat Arsenal at the Etihad, the illusion comes back. He used the word illusion. That is a deliberate choice of language. He is not promising anything. He is not making bold declarations of victory. He is framing the potential comeback as something dreamlike, something fragile, and in doing so, he removes the pressure from his own team while simultaneously creating a fascinating narrative that draws all the attention and scrutiny onto Arsenal. It is in many ways a masterclass in managing the media environment around a title race, and Arsenal need to be very aware of it. Now, let us look at what Alan Shearer had to say, because his perspective adds another important dimension to this story. Shearer was clear and direct. He said that if Arsenal had beaten Bournemouth on Saturday, the title race was as good as over. That assessment is hard to argue with. A 12-point lead at this stage of the season against a team still needing to play you directly would have been almost impossible to overturn. The reality for Arsenal is that they had the chance to put this title beyond all realistic doubt, and they did not take it. Shearer also pointed out that Arsenal had come off the back of a genuinely positive Champions League performance against Sporting in Lisbon. They had won a tough European game on the road. That kind of result is usually a platform for confidence and momentum. The expectation was that the positive energy from that win would carry over into the Bournemouth game at home, but it did not, and Shearer found that striking, as should we all. When a team wins a big game midweek and then performs poorly at the weekend, it sometimes suggests that the physical and emotional energy required for the European game was too great. It suggests that there was nothing left in the tank when Saturday came around. That is a squad depth issue. That is a recovery issue. And it is something Arteta will need to manage very carefully in the coming days as Arsenal prepare for the trip to the Etihad. Shearer's conclusion was measured but stark. He said Arsenal have put themselves under huge pressure again. And that phrase again is the most telling word in his entire analysis because it implies a pattern. It implies that this is not the first time this season that Arsenal have allowed situations to become unnecessarily complicated. The history of this campaign and of recent Arsenal seasons contains too many moments where the club appeared to be on the verge of something definitive, only to find a way to make things harder for themselves. And that brings us to the most important question of all. What happens now? The situation is that Arsenal still lead the Premier League by 9 points. Even after this defeat, even with the pressure mounting, the lead is significant. Manchester City need to win every single remaining game just to have a chance. And they still have to face Chelsea at Stamford Bridge before worrying about Arsenal. Stamford Bridge is not an easy venue. Guardiola himself acknowledged that when he said, and it bears repeating, that Stamford Bridge is not an easy place to go. So Arsenal retain the advantage. But the psychological shift that this weekend has created is real and cannot be dismissed. The confidence that was building through the season, the sense that the title was being managed towards the finishing line has been disrupted. And now Arteta faces arguably the most important week of his entire time as Arsenal manager. He needs to go to the Etihad Stadium and get a result. He needs to restore belief within his squad. He needs to recalibrate his tactics and his decision-making after a performance that showed a team lacking clarity and conviction. And he needs to do all of that while the entire country is watching and the pressure is at its absolute peak. The evidence suggests that the decisions Arteta makes in the next 7 days will define the legacy of this Arsenal season. There is no more margin for unnecessary changes. There is no more room for experiments with the captaincy order or departures from what has worked all season. The message from the evidence in front of us is simple. Go back to basics, trust the structure, give your players certainty, because at this level, in these moments, certainty is everything. Arsenal still have this title in their hands. 9 points is 9 points. But the Bournemouth defeat, the captaincy confusion, and the questions around the team's form and mindset have made the path narrower. And with Manchester City still breathing hard on their heels, Arsenal cannot afford another step in the wrong direction. This is the moment that separates the teams who genuinely want to be champions from the teams who almost get there. This is where character, clarity, and leadership at the highest level become the decisive factors. The next week will tell us everything we need to know about this Arsenal squad. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, please hit the subscribe button and the like button right now. This channel is dedicated to giving you the kind of serious, thoughtful football analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Share this video with a fellow Arsenal supporter who needs to hear a calm and clear breakdown of exactly where things stand. I will see you in the next one.